I'm a 44-year-old man, and my ex-wife, a 39-year-old woman, and I were married for 11 years, no kids. We were both on the heavier side until about 2 years ago when I got a blood test showing I was at risk for diabetes, gout, and high blood pressure. It scared me, so we started living healthier. I dropped from 258 pounds to 187, and my wife, let's call her Nicole, went from 183 to 143 pounds. We were feeling great, and I never developed those conditions. We'd hit the gym most afternoons, and there was a coach there, we'll call him Jason. Once Nicole got in shape, more guys started noticing her. I felt proud, honestly. She had a great figure, especially her legs, and I'd be lying if I said other men didn't notice too. Jason was no exception. He often checked out women and loved showing off his muscles. As Nicole and I became regulars at the gym, I saw she was enjoying the attention from men. One day, we were both on the ellipticals, and Jason was in front of us using the cable machine. He took off his shirt and started doing crossovers. I gave Nicole a look like, "Can you believe this guy?" But she just stared at him, even licking her lips. I glanced at Jason and he grinned. It crushed me. I was getting in shape too, but I didn't have the ripped body he had. On the drive home, I commented about Jason showing off, and Nicole casually said, "Really?" I didn't notice. I told her, "You were staring." She brushed it off, saying, "I don't remember, I must have been thinking about something else." I didn't push it, but I noticed they were talking more often at the gym afterward. A few weeks later, Nicole was doing squats on the Smith machine when Jason walked over to help her. He put his hands on her waist, and that's when I lost it. She finished her set, and I went over, telling him firmly, "I've got it from here." Jason just smiled and said, "No problem, buddy." He calls everyone, buddy. As soon as he walked away, Nicole could tell I was upset, and she snapped, "Oh my God, Alex." I told her, "We'll talk at home." Once home, all hell broke loose. She called me jealous and immature. I told her I could see Jason was trying to get in her pants. She admitted she knew but insisted she'd never cheat. I asked why she let him touch her, and she said she didn't want to be rude. After about an hour of arguing, we agreed to switch gyms. We started going to a different one, but Nicole was resentful in the following months. Her argument was that I didn't trust her. 3 months later, a great job opportunity came up, but it required me to work afternoons. We discussed it, and I took it, which meant different gym schedules. I went in the mornings, and Nicole kept going in the afternoons. That's when everything fell apart. Nicole's resentment grew, and we barely spoke. I sent her messages during the day, telling her about my day, saying I missed her, sending memes, but her replies were always short. "Yes, okay, same here, haha." I was really worried and suggested couples therapy, but she told me I needed therapy for my trust issues. I agreed, desperate to fix our marriage, and convinced myself I was the problem. I started therapy in 2022, but Nicole's behavior didn't change. We weren't intimate anymore, she was never in the mood. I snooped through her phone but found nothing suspicious. I even checked her car, thinking maybe she had a second phone, but there was nothing. I looked through her phone's map history. It showed the usual routes: home, work, gym, and back. Every time I tried to talk to her about it, she'd say she was going through a midlife crisis and that it would pass. Since I had no concrete proof of her cheating, I kept working and worrying. We live in a condo, and the security guard there, a cheerful guy named Steve, chatted with me regularly. One day, Steve mentioned that his shoulder was sore from moving a heavy couch the day before. I sympathized, and then he dropped the bomb. "Maybe you could set up an appointment with your wife's masseuse." I stared at him, confused. "What masseuse?" I asked. "The guy who came yesterday to give her a massage," Steve said. It took me a moment to process what he was saying. "Do you have a video of him?" I asked. Steve must have seen the look on my face because he quickly pulled out his phone to show me. And guess who it was? Jason. He had been over a few times to massage my wife. I took the day off from work and started investigating. I borrowed a co-worker's car and followed Nicole that afternoon. She parked her car at the mall where the gym is, and there was Jason waiting for her. They were acting like a couple, hugging, kissing, laughing together. My heart nearly shattered. They walked hand in hand for a few blocks until they entered a residential area. I tried to follow with my phone ready to record, but the security guard there stopped me. "Can I help you?" he asked. I played it off and said, "What a lovely couple. Do you know them?" He thought for a moment and then said, I think they're newlyweds." That was all he could tell me. I called Nicole's phone, but she didn't pick up. I went back to the mall, to her car, and realized why I couldn't track her movements. I called again, and I could hear her phone ringing inside her car. That's why the location hadn't shown up. She'd been leaving her phone behind. To make things worse, I found out she hadn't been going to the gym at all for the past 8 months. I didn't know it at the time, but the night before would be the last time I'd ever share a bed with Nicole. I returned the car and headed straight home. I didn't even wait to process what I'd just seen before calling my parents. My dad picked up, and through gritted teeth, I told him everything. I was choking on the words, barely holding back the rage. He stayed calm and told me to gather evidence. We both knew this marriage was dead, and I needed to arm myself for what was coming. He said he'd get in touch with one of his lawyer friends, the best in the business. A little while later, Nicole called, noticing the missed calls. I kept it together just enough to tell her I was home. She chirped, "I'm just getting back from the gym, my butt's killing me." Of course it is. When she walked in, she saw my face and asked, "Why were you crying?" I don't know how I managed, but I plastered on a fake smile and told her I was feeling sick, that I probably had the flu and left work early. I told her to keep her distance, acting like I was worried she'd catch something. Then I told her I'd be sleeping in the guest room. She agreed, no hesitation. I spent the entire night staring at the ceiling, rage boiling over. I didn't sleep at all. Around midnight, I heard her giggling. Probably texting Jason. No proof yet, but I felt it in my gut. It hit me then. How had I missed it for so long? She was probably hiding his contact under one of her female coworkers' names. The next morning, while Nicole was in the shower, I grabbed her phone. I set up a remote session on my laptop and put it back where it was. Easy, we both knew each other's passwords. The session would stay active as long as her phone was nearby or on the same Wi-Fi. Then I saw it, under a female name with a dumbbell as the profile picture. I clicked through. Most of the messages had been deleted, but I caught enough. They were using code, obviously. One read, "Can you deliver the papers to my desk? Like hell, Nicole has a desk at work." Another said, "Going to the meeting, where are you?" But the kicker. Boss is in his office. He's clueless. Clever, huh? I'm boss. I figured out I was the boss because her actual boss is a woman. Nicole came out of the shower, glancing at me. "You look like hell. Maybe you should stay with your parents for a while," she suggested, almost like she was ready to shove me out the door herself. I told her no, thinking about all the evidence I still needed to pile up. After she left, I called my dad again. He gave me the lawyer's number, and I explained the whole thing. But the lawyer said the screenshots I'd taken wouldn't hold up. Jason wasn't listed by name, and Nicole was smart enough to keep the messages vague. I could take pictures of them together, but she could easily claim they were just friends. And if I tried following them into private property, it might blow back on me. I spent the day at work on autopilot, fury simmering under the surface. My mind was spinning with ways to catch her. I thought about installing hidden cameras at home, but Jason didn't come over regularly, and Nicole might find them. That's when the plan formed. I needed to be out of the picture. So, I texted her, telling her I tested positive for the flu and would be staying with my parents. She liked that idea far too much, saying she'd miss me, but she'd call every day. The minute I hung up, I called my dad and my brother. This was it. When I got home, Nicole had already packed a suitcase for me. She could barely contain herself. She wanted me gone. I told her I'd be taking my laptop and quickly checked her messages one last time. There it was, "Boss will be out of the office, want to come to my desk." She bit the bait, just as I expected. That night, there was no dinner, no kiss, not even a hint of affection. I saw her glance at her watch twice, clearly waiting. As I left, I told her I'll miss you. I fully expected her to slam the door in my face, but instead, she walked me all the way to my car. That's when I knew Jason was already there, probably hiding in her car or inside the building. There was no way she'd risk him showing up now. I drove off, but something wasn't right. My blood was boiling. I turned around, not even thinking, just fueled by fury. I crept back into the condo, moving as silently as I could. The second I walked through the door, I heard music blaring from the bedroom, along with the unmistakable sounds of moaning. My heart was pounding. Next to the bedroom door, their clothes were scattered all over the sofa, his and hers. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and stormed in. There she was, my wife of 11 years, bent over, and Jason right behind her. I got a clear shot of their faces the moment they realized I was standing there. Nicole screamed and yanked the blanket around her. Jason, acting all tough, came toward me, completely naked. Yeah, I made sure to record him doing my wife. He tried to get in my face, barking, "Why don't you go for a walk, buddy?" Before I knew it, I slammed my open hand into his throat, a move I'd seen in that Mel Gibson movie *Ransom*. The idiot dropped to his knees, gasping for air. I growled, "Get out of my house," and kicked him out. I grabbed his clothes and hurled them after him just as my dad, brother, and Steve, the security guard, showed up. I waved them off, "I've got this," and slammed the door. On the upside, one of my neighbors, an older lady in her 50s, ran into me in the condo elevator. She mentioned she hadn't seen Nicole around lately, and I told her we were drifting apart. Out of nowhere, she mentioned that she's having a dinner party soon, and her single niece is visiting for a few days. She even invited me, saying I should come. I was a bit caught off guard, but it seems like I'm back in the market. My lawyer informed me that Nicole was supposed to be served with the divorce papers last Friday, but due to some national festivities, she ended up getting served that Sunday morning at her parents' house. The following Monday, I found a letter slid under my door. Obviously, it was from Nicole. It mostly explained her reasoning behind why she cheated. Now, this is where another character enters the story. Let's call her Flirty, one of Nicole's coworkers. I'd met her a few times at work events like Christmas parties and anniversary dinners. She's real thin, the type that wears a ton of makeup and acts like every guy in the room wants her. One time, she even told Nicole I was staring at her. In reality, I looked at her once because I could see her ribs, and I thought she looked unhealthy. Anyway, according to Nicole's letter, Flirty swooped in after Nicole lost weight. She wanted to be best friends, claiming they were the two hotties at work. That's where the brainwashing began. Flirty started feeding her garbage about how she deserved a better man, someone on her level. She told Nicole I was just some pathetic guy who'd try to control her now that she was attractive. When that thing with the Smith machine happened, Flirty egged her on, saying, "See? Didn't I tell you? He wants to own you, not love you." Nicole fell for it, and thanks to Flirty's manipulation, she resented me for months. After we started going to the gym at different times, Nicole ran into Jason at the mall one day, purely by accident. He approached her, and she admitted in the letter that she had a crush on someone like him before we even met. Apparently, that's something she never bothered to tell me. They grabbed something to eat, and of course, they flirted. Nicole showed Flirty Jason's picture from Facebook, and Flirty told her she'd be an idiot if she didn't sleep with him. She went as far as saying I didn't compare to Jason, calling him a Greek god. Nicole had the chance, she was eager, so she went for it. Jason took her back to his place, which, coincidentally, is near the mall where they bumped into each other, and she still doesn't know it's Frank's dad's house. This all started 9 months ago. Flirty, it turns out, is a professional when it comes to cheating. She taught Nicole how to cover her tracks, even down to using coded work messages, hiding Jason's contact info, and erasing her map history. Flirty even told Nicole not to change her phone password because that would raise my suspicions immediately. According to Nicole, Jason hated it when she talked about me. His punishment? Leaving hickeys on her body. Now it makes sense why she started wearing pajamas to bed, saying she was cold. Jason constantly trashed me, but Nicole never joined in. Meanwhile, Flirty kept telling her she deserved this affair, that I was weak, and that I had it coming. Nicole admitted she enjoyed the excitement, the danger, and, yeah, the sex with Jason. But it also hurt her to watch me trying so hard to be a better husband, knowing she was the one causing my pain. She said it was easier to ignore me and keep chasing the pleasure Jason gave her. When the day came, and I caught them red-handed, Nicole was completely blindsided. She really thought I had no clue. She wrote in the letter, and I'm going to quote her here. "I was in shock and instinctively covered myself with the blanket when I realized what was happening. I saw you pushing and kicking Jason out of the room in the house. After you closed the door and came back, I didn't know what to say. I'd never seen you that angry before. When you said, 'I've never hurt you, and I won't,' that was true. In all the years we've known each other, you never once hurt me, not even when we found out it was my fault we couldn't have kids." She went on to say that after hearing me crying in the spare room, she wanted to comfort me but knew she couldn't. We have a mirror near the front door, and when she looked at herself before leaving, she couldn't even bear her own reflection. She cried in the car, asking herself, "What have I done?" That night, Jason called her, but she blocked him. She ended up at my sister-in-law's house by midnight, about 2 hours after everything went down. Her place is about 40 minutes from mine. She was terrified to tell my sister-in-law what really happened because, well, my sister-in-law is older and doesn't take any nonsense. A few days after everything went down, I had an anxiety attack. My therapist said it was from all the stress I'd been bottling up. My life had flipped upside down, and I guess my mind just hadn't caught up. It was the first time I'd ever had an episode like that, and I thought I was having a stroke. My heart was racing, I was drenched in sweat, and my mind was spinning with panic. My coworkers freaked out and called 911. An ambulance arrived, and if I hadn't been so scared, I might have enjoyed the ride. The paramedic kept saying, "Sir, you're having a panic attack. You're going to be fine." When we got to the hospital, they sedated me, and I finally started to feel a little better, groggy but calmer. The doctor asked me my name, my age, and the date, and I answered all his questions before I passed out. When I woke up, guess who was sitting next to me? Nicole. I'd forgotten to take her off my emergency contact list. I was still foggy from the meds, and when I saw her, I smiled and said, "Nicole." She had a book in her lap, but the second she heard me, she jumped up and came over, tears in her eyes. "Hey, my love, you really scared us," she said, and that's when it all hit me like a ton of bricks. I stopped smiling. "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to sit up, but my body felt weak and uncoordinated. She shushed me and said, "Take it easy, no sudden movements. I'll get the doctor." She kissed my forehead before walking out, and while I wanted to avoid it, my reflexes were too slow. That kiss felt so familiar, but I knew it had been over a year since she kissed me like she actually meant it. While she was gone, I looked around the room. There were 6 beds, most of them occupied, with curtains pulled for privacy. I noticed I wasn't wearing my clothes anymore, just a hospital gown. A few minutes later, Nicole came back with the doctor. Apparently, I'd been out for 26 hours. The doctor explained that the anxiety attack was brought on by a combination of severe stress and a massive shift in my life. He asked if I'd stopped taking any medications, and Nicole and I both answered at the same time, "I don't, / he doesn't take any meds." I hated how well she still knew me. The doctor told me I needed some time off and recommended I see a psychiatrist. I told him I was already in therapy, but he pointed out that my therapist, being a psychologist, couldn't prescribe medications. Then he said I must be starving and that I'd be discharged the next day. He left the room, and it was just me and Nicole. It was 8 p.m., and Nicole still had an hour left before visiting hours were over. She didn't seem like she wanted to leave, though, and the whole situation felt painfully awkward. I started babbling to fill the silence, asking, "You said, we, earlier. Who's we?" She smiled, like she knew I couldn't help but engage. "Your parents and me," she replied. "They were here earlier." I asked, "Did they leave?" She nodded, "Yes, they're expecting my call to check in." I told her, "I'll talk to them tomorrow. You can go. I want to sleep." She ignored me, saying, "Your dinner's on the way. You should eat." My stomach growled at the mention of food, and I realized I hadn't eaten in 26 hours. A nurse came in with a tray a few minutes later, asking Nicole to adjust the bed so I could sit up. I must have made some kind of face because Nicole looked amused as she watched me. As the nurse set the tray down in front of me, Nicole said, "God, I love you so much." I glared at her and told her again to go home, but the nurse snapped at me. She informed me that Nicole had sponge bathed me and even shaved me while I was out, something I hadn't noticed until just then. Finally, the nurse asked Nicole to feed me since I was still groggy from the medication. I told her we were getting divorced, but she said that wasn't her problem. I should be thankful Nicole had been there for me, and that I was being ungrateful. Then she walked out. I tried to eat on my own, but my hands were still clumsy, and I was making a mess with the soup. Nicole begged me to let her help, and feeling like a stubborn child, I finally gave in. "Fine," I muttered. I've never felt so vulnerable in my life. She fed me, all maternal and affectionate, and I hated every second of it. I had the chance to really look at her. She wasn't wearing any makeup. I saw the lines around her eyes, the crow's feet that hadn't been there before. I felt better once I'd finished eating, and Nicole took the tray away, still in an annoyingly good mood. I noticed a man in his 50s, one of the other patients, staring at her as she came and went. I wasn't surprised. Even in jeans and a coat, she's still a knockout. But I hated feeling indebted to her. When she sat back down, I muttered, "Thanks for being here." She looked me in the eyes, smiled, and said, "Anytime." Then she reached out to brush my hair off my forehead, but this time I pulled away. She looked hurt, but I didn't say a word. She tried to grab my hand, but I pulled that away too. "Can we talk, please?" she asked softly, but I stayed quiet. The only reasons I had to be civil toward her were the twins. They weren't baptized when they were little, but after my sister and ex-husband left, Nicole and I had stepped up to help. I love those kids like they're my own. I used to joke with Nicole that babysitting them was good practice for when we had our own children. But that's never going to happen now. When my sister-in-law asked us to be their godparents, I teared up. They're the closest thing I have to a daughter and a son, and I know Nicole loves them too. I didn't want any drama around my godkids, and I missed them like crazy. I hadn't seen them since about a week before I caught Nicole with Jason, and I hadn't spoken to them either, mostly to avoid her. So, I finally said, "All right, let's talk," at the condo. "I'll reach out to you soon." She offered to take me home when I was discharged the next day, but I turned her down. "No," I said, "I'll have my parents come get me. We'll talk at the condo." I wanted to speak with my parents alone. Nicole noticed I was looking around for my clothes, so she opened a cabinet by the bed and handed me my phone. I eyed her suspiciously, and she gave me that guilty look she always had when she was hiding something. I knew right then that she'd snooped through my phone, and she knew that I knew. We didn't need to say anything. That's the kind of unspoken language you develop after 11 years of marriage. I didn't care if she'd looked through my phone. I had nothing to hide. I texted my parents, and they called me back almost immediately. As I talked to them, the nurse came back to tell Nicole visiting hours were over. Nicole leaned in to say goodbye, but I ignored her. She whispered in my ear, "I know you keep your word. I'll wait for you to contact me. I love you." Then she kissed the top of my head and left. My dad always told me, a man is worth as much as his word, and I planned to keep mine. I asked my parents if they knew what had happened after I passed out. They filled me in. One of my coworkers had shown up at the hospital to provide details about my medical insurance. That's when the hospital staff saw my emergency contact information and called Nicole. After the hospital contacted her, my sister-in-law reached out to my parents. When Nicole arrived at the hospital, she met my coworker and he left shortly after. Nicole had been waiting for the doctor when my parents showed up. My dad, always cordial, asked Nicole what she knew at that point. After a bit of waiting, a nurse called out, "Relatives of patient op," and they all stood up. The nurse led them to the doctor, who had already tested my blood and told them I was physically fine. My anxiety attack, he explained, was psychological. Since Nicole was still listed as my emergency contact, the doctor asked her to come in and see me. She promised my parents she'd call them after speaking with me. When she returned, she was surprised to find that my parents were still there, waiting. She ended up giving them a ride home and told them how she'd helped the nurses undress me and get me into the hospital gown. They didn't talk about the divorce. My parents thanked her for the ride and agreed to visit me in the morning, with Nicole offering to switch with them in the afternoon around 1 p.m. I also called my sister-in-law to thank her for notifying my parents. Thankfully, my godchildren were still awake, and I got to talk to them for a bit. They were making get-well-soon cards for me. I promised I'd come by to visit the following weekend. The next day, Thursday, I was discharged from the hospital, and my parents drove me to my new place. A week before the panic attack, I had started moving into this apartment. I brought over all my personal belongings. Everything else stayed at the condo, which I planned to rent out as fully furnished. With 3 universities nearby, I knew students would be lining up for a place like that. I had already picked up the basic furniture for my new place. A refrigerator, a stove, since I'd have to learn to cook my own meals now, a bed, a table with chairs, and a desk. I also got some cleaning supplies. For the first time in a long while, I felt a little spark of excitement. This small apartment wasn't just a place to stay, it was my place. Finally, something I could call my own. Last weekend, I met with Nicole. Before letting her in, I asked Steve to make sure she was alone. She arrived on time, dressed to impress, wearing a short new dress and high heels, even though she hates heels, but she knows I like them. I won't lie, my heart skipped a beat when I saw her. She smiled as I opened the door, looking like she was genuinely happy to see me. I stayed calm, my face showing nothing. She opened her arms, expecting a hug, but I just gestured for her to come in. I offered her tea, chamomile, her favorite. She accepted, and I made myself a coffee. We sat down across from each other with the table between us. I took out my phone and hit record. Nicole, almost immediately, admitted she had wanted to sleep with Jason. She confessed she loved the attention she was getting, and whenever she caught him eyeing her, she felt excited and aroused. She broke down in tears as she explained that it all started before the incident on the elliptical machines, about a week earlier, when I was in the locker room changing and she was waiting outside. Jason started chatting with her, flirting, and she couldn't believe someone like him would come on to her. I didn't sugarcoat my response. Is that all it takes for you to toss your morals and ethics out the window? A guy with muscles and a bird brain. From that moment on, I started calling Jason bird brain. She cried harder, saying she was stupid and selfish, that she had taken me for granted. But she swore it was just physical, never emotional. She promised me she had never told him she loved him, and that I was the only one who owned her heart and body. I took a deep breath, regaining my composure. It's been about 3 months since we last had sex, I said, and even then, I could tell you weren't into it. I'm guessing you were already thinking about bird brain. Nicole shook her head, claiming it wasn't true. According to her, she couldn't imagine living without me. I don't believe you, I shot back. You had a good income. You could have easily built a life with bird brain. She repeated, over and over, that she didn't love him, that he was just a toy. I called her bluff again and reminded her of what I saw at the mall. Here's how that conversation went. I saw you at the mall with him. You were hugging, kissing, acting like we did when we were engaged. Fidgeting, I'm so sorry. Tell me the truth, you do love him. Shaking her head, no, I like how people stared at us. But I don't love him. You looked like the perfect couple, something you never had with me, right? You loved the attention you got with him, the kind of attention you'd never get with someone like me. Nicole, please, don't say that. Me, why not? It's the truth. It is. I've never considered myself an attractive guy. I'm the kind of person no one notices twice. Nicole, no. You're the man of my dreams. I only want to be with you. Me, if that's true, then why did you cheat? What did he give you that I didn't? She couldn't answer. I asked again, and she covered her face with her hands. Finally, she admitted it, she found Birdbrain's body more attractive than mine. Another jab straight to the gut. I expected her to say that, but it still hurt like hell. Nicole, I swear, it was a moment of weakness, and I hate myself for it. Me, 1 moment. I yelled, that moment lasted 9 months. Me, 9 months. 9 fucking months of disrespect and lies. Tell me, how am I supposed to trust you ever again? Was Birdbrain the only one? What happens when the next smooth-talking douchebag shows up? You were damn good at lying and hiding this. Now she looked desperate. I'm telling you the truth. I know you have no reason to believe me, but I've reflected. I've seen what my life looks like without you, and I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I cheated on you. I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry your family hates me. But most of all, I'm ashamed that I hurt you. Tears were streaming down her face. I'm begging for your forgiveness. I'm here to come clean, to fix this, so we can be together again. Before D-Day, I would have given anything to stop those tears. Today, I felt nothing but anger. I told her, I can't do this. I need space and time. She nodded, trying to hold herself together. I understand, she whispered. Before she left, she asked me, do you think you'll ever forgive me? I shook my head. I don't know, I told her, but I appreciate your honesty. She hugged me tightly, but I didn't hug her back. Her tears soaked my neck as she cried harder. Swearing on the memory of her late father, her hero, she promised me she'd never cheat again, that she had completely cut Birdbrain out of her life. She even used the nickname herself. She vowed to dedicate herself to us, to our marriage, to making things right. She was so desperate she even offered to gain the weight back, just to prove how committed she was to me. I told her she was talking nonsense. We'd both worked hard to lose that weight. It's not about that, I said. But she kept going, saying therapy had made her realize she was a narcissist and addicted to attention. Before she left, I gave her a key to the condo so she could come by and gather the rest of her things. Then, finally, she was gone. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a sense of relief. My mind was telling me, now you can move on. I lay down, thinking about everything, reflecting on how far I'd come. I even forgot to eat. As I lay there, I realized I had finally accepted it. The love of my life was gone. I guess I'd found my closure. A few days later, Nicole came by to take the last of her things from the condo. After she left, I felt peace and I had already forgiven her. This is the right time to move on. To anyone mourning the loss of a marriage, don't let the bitterness consume you. There is light at the end of this dark tunnel. It takes time, patience, and dedication, but eventually, you'll find your way through. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday, you'll get past all of this. Subscribe and stay one step ahead of cheaters. And trust me, the next story makes this one look like a fairy tale.